It's Friday again. Where does the time go? And that means I have to watch Robyn Hood with a Y again. The show with an intro song so bad, I would genuinely rather listen to Friday by Rebecca Black.
Pull up in this mess that we be robbing. We be robbing. We be robbing. You think it's a game, but really it's not. Show with the force to come in hot.
It would be generous to say that the show is only slightly morally confused. As for the cosplay this time, there do seem to be a lot of pictures of women in fancy dress as Robyn Hood for reasons. Not that I'm complaining. This is the kind of Robyn Hood series we could have gotten. Maybe we could have got Jessica Lucas in this outfit. I'm just saying, she's already in Canada. I think she's from Vancouver originally. This is an opportunity missed. In this episode called Lionheart, coming to us from the mean streets of Toronto, we will get to see that character, Lionheart, based on a real Norman king of England, Richard the Lionhearted, Richard Coeur de Lion, who ruled England as King Richard I from 1189 to 1199 AD. Richard the Lionheart was also Duke of Normandy, Aquitaine and Gascony, Lord of Cyprus, Count of Poitiers, Anjou, Maine and Nantes. Here is a statue of him from outside Parliament in London, and now he's some guy in what appears to be quite a bad dreadlock wig in an ill-advised Canadian TV show that probably should never have been made in the first place. And it appears not even real historical figures are safe now. Just ask Anne Boleyn. Where do you get off taking the history of another country? I forget. And we'll get to that. In this episode, they're also introducing the character Guy of Gisborne, who now is a gangster and thief from Gisborne Tower Block, and his gang appears to be two people. This guy and a woman called Coco, and dear lord, Coco is a lot of woman. She's one of several new characters that get thrown in, once again, that tend to be crude racial stereotypes. Guy of Gisborne certainly is, and I'm not sure who my favourite Guy of Gisborne is from any Robyn adaptation. Maybe Richard Armitage in the BBC version, where they also race-swapped Friar Tuck. That show had a weird cast. Tuck was played by David Harewood, who went on to play the Martian Manhunter in Supergirl, and they cast Keith Allen as the Sheriff of Nottingham. But Richard Armitage normally tends to be good. He played Thorin in the Hobbit films.
A dwarf.
But what can you expect? It was on the BBC and they're terrible. But it did have a very different piece of casting for Jill Scarlett in their version. In that, he was played by a young Harry Lloyd, who went on to play Daenerys' brother in Game of Thrones, who done got molten gold poured on his noggin by Aquaman. As for which one was worse and more disrespectful to the story, they're much of a muchness. Guy has just got out of prison after 9 years inside in Robyn Hood with a Y, as opposed to actual history, where it was Richard the Lionheart who ended up in multiple dungeons as a prisoner, and Guy's first act after getting out of prison is to go to Sherwood Tower and steal the money collected for Lionheart Day, and for this, he's apparently the bad guy of the show.
What am I, a bad guy?
And in that case, Rodney Dangerfield, yes you were. But Guy is apparently bad as far as this show is concerned for stealing the money that the Hoods themselves stole. Oh sorry, the show seems to be under the impression that was them earning the money. And this is why I say the show is deeply morally confused. Lionheart is a reverential figure in their area. He has a mural painted of him with a Bible proverb under it. And while we're on the subject, if the Bible is where you're taking moral inspiration from, there does seem to be a bit of a contradiction between this and this one of the Ten Commandments. I'm just saying, it's kind of hard to square brazen theft with Christian morality. Sorry, I may have to translate that. There you go. And this really cuts to the heart of what I feel is wrong with the morality of the show. Guy of Gisborne is a thief, and he's the bad guy in the show apparently because of that. But the good guys are all thieves as well. And what's the greater context? What could the maker be thinking? And the only major difference between the good guys and the bad guy in this appears to be the effect on the community. It seems to be like a tribal mindset. It's not so much that stealing is bad, stealing from the community is bad. in the view of the maker of the show. Stealing for the community and spending it on a bouncy castle, that's good apparently. I've found this tends to be the case when someone's morality is entirely based on self-interest. We open up on a flashback where Little John is on the floor and seems to be losing a fight on a basketball court, and I have no idea what's supposed to be going on. Guy Gisborne seems to be paying 2 kids to fight for his entertainment. Maybe? At least he seems to be willing to pay 1 youth if he beats up Little John. I'm not sure why child fights are now a thing. They did that in House of the Dragon as well, but it's Lionheart in what looks like a very obvious wig that breaks up the fight, drawing the ire of Guy for spoiling his fun. Guy later gets his revenge by offing Lionheart like he's a French crossbowman, and that's not even what lands him in jail. Apparently he got thrown in jail on a weapons charge that got him 10 years. He walked for what he did to Lionheart because, as the show says, no one would talk. No one would talk? What would they even say? There was only one witness, Little John. Little John didn't talk to the police. It's not that nobody talked, it's that Little John didn't talk. He also didn't get rid of Guy there and then because Lionheart told him not to. Lionheart had become a mentor to Little John, albeit not a very good one. The series makers genuinely seem to be under the impression that justice is best meted out not by the police or the justice system, but in the form of a vigilante, because that's what Lionheart essentially seems to do. Deliver entirely arbitrary justice, one face punch at a time. And I'm genuinely lost as to what the people who made this show's morality is. There seems to be no absolute morality at all, but instead just an in-group preference. If you're in the in-group of people, then theft is a positive if it helps the in-group, but theft is a negative if it hurts the in-group. People within the in-group get infinite leeway, people outside it get none. And the in-group worryingly appears to be mostly ethnicity based. So Guy turns up 10 years later after he got out of jail, and Guy looks exactly the same. They didn't even bother to age him up. So he comes back and starts immediately shaking down local businesses and stealing from people, and Little John wants to go and deal with him. So they start to hatch a plan to show Guy the error of his ways for stealing by stealing the money from him that he stole from them after they stole someone's car. It appears to whoever made this show, 3 wrongs make a right. We learn more about Much the Miller's son. It seems she was taken in by a local mechanic, and she's such a good mechanic that she can tell what's wrong with a car by the smell of maple syrup from a car outside when she's in a building. Later she says that Lewis the mechanic, who she works with, took her in when she had no place to go and let her work at the garage. So she's repaying him by trying to fix up the motorbike that he expressly told her to stay away from, and later in the episode she's going to steal that motorbike and use it in a crime when they steal from Guy of Gisborne. These are the heroes, remember? So Much is stealing a motorbike from the man who took her in so she can go and use it to steal money from a gangster. Little John finally agrees to let the other hoods help after Guy nearly puts a knife in his throat. And what is Robyn's plan?
Yo, we're dealing with Guy. Well, all right.
What's going on? So what we thinking?
We drag him down to our level.
She wants to drag Guy down to their level. And what can she mean? He's already a thief, and the good guys consider themselves on a lower moral level than Guy, a man who stole money from a charity box. So Robyn and her hoods prepare an ambush of Guy while he's out extorting businesses. Coco comes along, and Coco is still a lot of a woman. So while Coco is putting a man's hand in a vice, Much, on the now repaired stolen motorbike, steals Guy's money and races off, causing Guy and pals to chase Much in a car. Much then leads them into an ambush in a dark garage. The hoods disarm Guy by putting an arrow through Coco's bag, where Guy keeps his weapon to avoid more weapons charges landing on him, and then they steal the bag and then put an arrow in Guy's shoulder. And as Robyn comes out from the darkness, this was all idiotic. Their entire plan revolved around hiding in the dark, and they carried it out using masks that glow in the dark. It is genuinely one of the worst attempts at stealth I've ever seen. It's comparable to Solid Snake hiding in a cardboard box. They may as well have resold their shoes with clown horns. How many people know who that bike belongs to? The one you just chose to use in this crime against a very dangerous man who you're leaving alive, and he's probably going to come looking for revenge. You've left a trail right back to the man who took Much in when she had nowhere else to go. They just had his hand in a vice. What do you think they're going to do when they track the bike back to him? And despite this, I still don't get why everyone hates Robyn Hood with a Y so much, because to me, this show is comparable in quality, I'd say, to a Batwoman or a Gotham Knights or a Velma. I'd say they're all far below average because they're all awful in subtly different ways. So why the hate for this one in particular? Because it's still on a 1 out of 10 on IMDb, whereas Gotham Knights is sat on a 5.2, which it never is. But I have some ideas, and I'm not sure it's hate exactly that's caused such a low score. I think it may instead be a lack of love. I think it may be because the show hasn't been very widely distributed, so the people seeking it out are doing it in order to hate watch it. That's my theory. That it's not so much that there are people who dislike it, because every show has people that dislike it, but a 1 out of 10 score suggests that nobody watching this show is a fan. There's seemingly no one willing to stand for this show and give it a 10 out of 10 because they like the politics or they think that the show's being review bombed, like some people seem to have done for Gotham Knights, and I'm not sure how I'd rate the show on a whole. Probably not 1 out of 10 though, because worse things exist than Robyn Hood with a Y. Things with worse writing, things with worse acting.
This is my house!
This is one of the reasons I stopped giving things ratings, because ratings are quite subjective. For example, how do you rate incompetent writing against a comedy that just isn't funny? Humour itself is subjective. How does a bad story, full of plot holes, weigh against something more competently written but hateful? Cinematography may be very important to one person, and the person next to them may not care about it at all. So I'm not sure if I'm being contrarian here or not when I say that I wouldn't recommend this show at all, but I also don't think it's the worst piece of media in existence. Chances are the worst series or film ever made, whatever it was that may be, probably never even got released.
What about the other Jedi spread across the galaxy?
Fuck.